Good morning. Well, this morning I've got a word from Jesus, and it's about how he draws us closer to him. And as he draws us closer to him, he draws us away at times from many of our human friends. And this can cause a lot of pain, rejection, misunderstandings all round. So here goes. My children, as I draw you closer and closer to my heart, you will find yourself with fewer and fewer human friends. Yes, you may know 1,000 people, and yet none of them, only me, will understand your hearts. You will find yourselves yearning to spend time with me, and often you will find that your human friends do not understand. Consider the Gospels when I called my disciples, and imagine how their friends and families may have reacted when they suddenly gave up everything to follow me. Similarly, read the lives of the saints and consider the countless stories of young saints such as Francis who were rejected by their very own. My little ones, do not view human rejection as something bad, but rather see it as an opportunity to grow spiritually and offer to me the hurt and pain of detachment. Well, it is true, when we read some of the saints like Sister Faustina, Saint Francis, they had these very deep encounters with Jesus, but the problem is they didn't come from the most spiritual or mystical type of families, and as a result, their parents, for good reasons, thought they had gone crackers, I suppose, or even if they didn't think they had gone crackers, so they were thinking more, well, what's going to put bread on the table? How are you going to earn a living? Very practical questions, which of course have their place. And as a result, it created terrible misunderstandings. And we all know the famous story of St. Francis taking off his coat, stripping naked, giving his coat to his dad, and then it was the bishop who put a cloak around St. Francis. And that symbolically, if you like, was the church becoming St. Francis's new family. And so Jesus says that, he says, as I draw you closer and closer to my heart, you will find yourself with fewer and fewer human friends. Well, why is that, you might say? Well, it's because, first of all, not a whole lot of people love Jesus, so already you're limited. And second of all, it's like Jesus is sort of deliberately doing it because he wants you to spend time with him. And sometimes I used to joke in the early years, especially when I was in France and I would spend an awful lot of time in the church, and people would say to me, "Oh, aren't you great? You spend so much time in the church." And in my heart is to smile to Jesus, and I'd say, "Well, Jesus, I can't tell you that I'm here out of pure love. To be honest with you, some of the time I'm here because I've nowhere else to go, and you're the best option. It's better than sitting at home." But then over time, you see, our relationship grows. Many of us were a bit like Simon, who was asked to help Jesus carry the cross. He didn't really want to do it, but he had to do it, and maybe if he didn't do it, he would have get beaten by the soldiers, so it was probably the best option. But then in helping Jesus carry the cross, he got to know Jesus, and in getting to know Jesus, he got to love Jesus, and eventually he liked doing it. And so it can be the same with us. Sometimes we can be praying because we feel lonely, we feel bored, because our friends don't want to talk to us, because maybe people are gossiping about us, or people are busy, or all sorts of stuff. And so we say, oh, you know what, I'll go down to the church. And we sit there, but then over time, it purifies, and our love for prayer actually grows. And then Jesus goes on to say, you may know 1,000 people, and yet none of them will understand your hearts. And see, that's true. Once Jesus touches your heart, he's got a love, an understanding, a wisdom that's from another dimension. He's God. And as a result, no human being will understand you or even can understand you in the same way. It's not their fault. And you can't understand another human being either in that same way. And so there are certain times that you will be surrounded by 1,000 people and yet no one understands you, and you'll find yourself yearning. You say, gosh, I wish I could get away. How many times have I felt like, oh, I can't wait for this party to end? I can't wait for this night to end. I can't wait to get away from all these people and to just sit in the church alone with Jesus. And he does that deliberately. He does that deliberately to show our hearts how different he is, how much he loves us, how we yearn for him, how other people, as nice and good and kind and all as they may be, how they just don't get us in the same way, don't love us in the same way. They're not God. And so then he goes on to say, consider the Gospels when I called my disciples. And imagine how their friends and families may have reacted when suddenly they gave up everything to follow him. So, in other words, there you are, maybe you were friends of St. Matthew, he was a tax collector, probably had a reasonable income, and then all of a sudden he's given up the job and he's gone off to follow this lunatic, so to speak, Jesus. Who is he? And you can imagine, and it's the same thing in today's society. Suddenly you have a big conversion experience and you give up everything maybe, or you make radical changes to your life, and people don't understand. And when people don't understand, they go against you and they block you and they say you're not thinking straight and they don't agree with you and they don't talk to you, and it creates terrible misunderstandings. Then they think you're a holy Joe and that you think you're better than everybody else and you're judging other people, and it creates horrendous division. And yet, why? Well, Jesus says, oh, why? Because he allows it to happen. And sometimes it's kind of strange because why would the God of love, the God who'd like us all to be reconciled, allow then such chaotic division, misunderstandings, and all sorts of stuff? Well, the reason is simple. God is true. He wants us all to be reconciled and love each other. But he wants to love each other with him in the middle. Imagine when we're in heaven and we all love each other, but yet Jesus and Mary are there in the middle, and we all know why we're there. We all know about spiritual things, and we all join in all the praise and everything like that. So it's the same on earth. Jesus doesn't want a superficial unity, that we all sit around the table eating Christmas dinner, but nobody really knows why we're there. Nobody knows about Jesus. Nobody knows about prayer. Nobody knows about God. That is not the type of unity that Jesus is yearning for. Jesus is yearning to be known and be loved, and that things like heaven and hell and salvation and confessions and reconciliation and the Eucharist, that all these things are known. And so that's why at times then in families or in the world, he calls some people, they make a radical decision, and then all of a sudden they become like a signpost of contradiction. But often the good thing is, often over time, people do come round because it makes them ask questions. And often over time, when one person in the family has a deep experience of Jesus and maybe is misunderstood, over time, with prayer, it will draw other people to asking more questions and getting to know their faith more. Now, they mightn't ever get or have the experience to the same level, but as my uncle once said to me, he said, once the Holy Spirit enters one person, he enters the family. Of course, afterwards it's up to the family, of course, to accept him and to become interested. But it's true. You know, if one person in your family, I don't know, goes to Australia, then all of a sudden everybody in the family knows a little bit more about Australia because they're receiving postcards, because they're hearing the other person's news. Or if, I don't know, one person in the family becomes a police officer, then all of a sudden everybody in the family gets to know a little bit more about how the police functions because, they hear it spoken about. And so by the same token, if one person in the family has an experience of Jesus, well then everybody in the family gets an opportunity to hear about that, and maybe they hear about Medjugorje for the first time. I've heard lots of stories when one person is drawn to Medjugorje, and then over time other people in the family go to Medjugorje, and then everybody in the family has gone by the end of it. And so Jesus allows these misunderstandings, hoping and praying that over the long course of things, it actually come to deeper understandings. So it's like going wrong to go right, so to speak. So he says then to those people going through it, do not view human rejection as something bad, but see it as an opportunity to grow spiritually and to offer me the hurt and pain of detachment. So in other words, don't see it as something bad in itself, because Jesus can bring good out of it. When you're misunderstood, when people talk about you, all these type of things, it is very painful. We'd be stones if we said, oh no, it doesn't affect me at all. I know even for myself, when I hear people saying horrible sort of stuff about me and all the rest, it affects me. I'd be lying if I said it didn't. On the other hand, it's also an opportunity to go before Jesus in prayer and say, my goodness, what was it like for you? You were God. At least when they're gossiping about me, I'm a sinner, and there might be some truths in some of what they're saying. I don't know. But you, Jesus, you're God. You were perfect from day one. You never did a thing wrong. And yet, imagine what would have been like for you, being gossiped about, being talked about, being misunderstood, being mocked, being jeered at, and ultimately being killed. And so all these things then are opportunities for us to grow spiritually, to grow in strength, and also to get closer to him in prayer, and to become more, if you like, dependent even on him to strengthen us. Because if we weren't being challenged, then we would have no need for him to strengthen us. And it's only when we're being challenged and all these type of things that we see inside how weak we still are and we need more of his help. And it's also an opportunity to pray. We should also always pray for the people that may be persecuting us, like St. Paul was persecuting the Christians, but all of us, every single one of us, before we were converted, we were guilty of the same things. How on earth would we understand? And so we have to be merciful and say, well, you know what? If it was the other way around and I was the one that had the faith, or they were the ones that had the faith experience or something, and I didn't, well, I would probably be saying all the exact same things about them, and maybe I'd even be saying worse. And so it's an opportunity for us to pray for those people that are persecuting us, pray for the people that don't understand us, and also have a heart of mercy for them and realize that behind it all, they do care about us, people care about us, it's just they don't understand the ways of Jesus. My ways are not your ways, he says. And that often is the issue. So on that note, let us continue to bring our lives to Jesus, and especially bring the misunderstandings, the hurts, the pains, the loneliness, the anxieties, the wounds, when the people we love don't understand. Continue to bring all that to Jesus, all that to Mary, offer the sufferings, offer the tears, offer the anxieties, offer it all to Jesus and ask him to strengthen our faith in him, to strengthen our love for him, and to fill us with consolations as we need, and also make full use of the sacraments as well, because it's in the sacraments and in prayer that the Holy Spirit gives us the strength to continue. It requires great strength at times to continue when we're going through these type of trials, because it can be very painful on our human emotions. And so let's continue to avail of all the tools of prayer, praise, rosary, confessions, adorations, spiritual reading, to continue to build ourselves up and to continue to trust in him, to continue to follow him, and to continue to walk in love, walk in forgiveness, and walk in hope. So thank you for watching.